Well, hey there, Mama, and welcome back to the Mom's Overcoming Overwhelm podcast, episode number 148. I'm Emily McDermott, and I'm here beside you on this journey as we work together to declutter your home, head, and heart. Well, since you are here, there is a good chance that you are overwhelmed. And I am so thrilled to have my friend Jessica Jackson back on the podcast today. Jessica is a homeschooling mother of four, host of the Thriving in Motherhood Podcast, creator of the Thriving in Motherhood Planner, which I use, and Journal, and cheerleader in her program, the Surviving to Thriving Toolkit. And she knows what it's like to try to find peace and balance between running a business, a household, and creating a strong family culture while real life keeps happening. After years of struggle, she realized there are simple, practical things that you can do to stop living survival mode, no matter what the circumstances are, and to find meaning and joy in everyday life. Her mission is to empower women to go from surviving motherhood to soaring, using their unique gifts and talents, having a relationship with God, experiencing life as the grand adventure it is, and enjoying meaningful relationships with friends and family. And Jessica has been my coach now for about 4 years. I love her, and today we're talking about a yes list to help you feel less overwhelmed, talking about our shoulds, what we should be doing versus what is aligned with our why, what to do when you think you could take something off your list, but you're feeling a lot of resistance, and much, much more. So what do you say? Grab that notebook and pen, and let's dive into today's conversation with Jessica Jackson. Hey there, Mama. Are you tired of all the stuff crowding your home, calendar, and mind? Do you wish you could say goodbye to the endless to-do list running around in your head? Want to declutter but don't know where to start? You're in the right place. Welcome to Mom's Overcoming Overwhelm, where you will find proven and practical solutions to declutter your home, head, and heart. Hi, I'm Emily, a wife, boy mom, and simplicity seeker. I struggled to get pregnant and felt overwhelmed until I discovered decluttering could create the physical and emotional space I needed to become a mom. Now, 2 kids later, I've transformed my life in motherhood by developing simple systems around decluttering, capsule wardrobes, kid stuff, cleaning and tidying, meal planning, time management, and more, and I can't wait to share them with you. If you're ready to reclaim the time and energy you crave, be present with your kids, and finally enjoy the life and motherhood you so deserve, let's kick overwhelm to the curb, shall we? Grab your lukewarm coffee, your notebook and pen, and clear up some counter space. Let's do this. Well, hey, Jessica, thank you so much for coming back on the Mom's Overcoming Overwhelm podcast. I am so excited to talk to you today.
Well, I absolutely love any chance I have to chat with you, so this is great.
Yeah, so Jessica is my coach. She's my friend. She is my mentor. She's all of these things. And I meet with her at least once a month as part of the Soaring Mothers Society, which I will link in the show notes today. And it has been such a blessing in my life. And always love the opportunity to talk to you again. And normally for first-time guests, I ask, is there a time in your motherhood that you remember being overwhelmed? But for you, since we already asked that question, I'm going to ask, what is going on right now? Are you in an overwhelmed season, or is something working really well that you want to share? I would love to just get a quick, snapshot of how things are right at this moment.
So yes to both. So there are things working really well, but to be honest, we were just gone all summer. And so for 5 weeks, we were on a road trip mobile with our family with 4 kids. Then my husband's had some really big work things that he was doing. And then those resolved, but then more big work things started. He started a new teaching schedule and semester. So he's teaching on Tuesday night and Saturday mornings. And then I started a new homeschooling thing with my kids. So I'm exhausted by the end of the day. So did I cry myself to sleep last night? Maybe. But it's going well. All those things are going well. But I just realized, what is wrong with me? And I'm well, in 2 weeks, we've done all of those things. It's just a lot. So yeah, this is a perfect show for me today.
I love that. Yeah, definitely for me, it's been kind of oh my gosh, my house is quiet again because my boy started school a couple days ago. And I'm well, now I don't have excuses for things that I said the whole summer. I can't do this because I have children all the time underfoot. So Yeah, I have been implementing some things that I think have helped with like the rhythm of the day, but I love that. Yeah, some days we just cry ourselves to sleep or cry in the closet. That's usually my favorite place.
I did both. Yeah,
Okay.
definitely did both.
And then we go a stretch of time where we're like, oh, yeah, I can sort of handle this. I
Yeah.
was listening to your podcast, which of course we'll link in the show notes, Thriving in Motherhood Podcast. I just love how you just keep it real, like no matter where you're at, but no matter what season of motherhood you're in, you're keeping it real. And one of the things that really caught my eye was this idea of a yes list, because a lot of times we think about like, our no list, like what am I trying not to say, not to do or not to say yes to, or also just the to-do list, which is kind of the never-ending thing. And I was just curious if you could walk us through like what a yes list is, kind of what that looked like for you, and then we can kind of talk a little bit more about like, okay, once we have the list, kind of what we do with it. So I'd love it if you could walk us through that.
Yeah. So this really came to me because I don't know, things have just been like built. Sometimes you just have years and like seasons that are just a lot and they're kind of surprising a lot because you weren't expecting it. And it just kind of like happened. And then you're like, what's going on? And so earlier this year in the spring, that's really where this hit me, where things were starting with my husband's work that were kind of getting big. I had some health things that were surprising, just kind of all this stuff. And I'd started the year off like so enthusiastic because I'm like, I signed up for 6 different programs that I was a part of. I mean, I was like, I'm going to school from my home, like not, just like, I don't know, there are these legal things I wanted to work on and business things I want to work on and home things I wanted to work on and just then all the homeschool and the life and the family systems. And so I think I just realized at some point, and books, so many books that I wanted to read. And so I kind of get to the point where I realized like I said yes to a lot of stuff and it was good things like singing in my church choir. And I mean, and I'm so loyal and I'm so committed that I finish whatever I start. Like that's how I podcast every year, week for 7 years, right? Like it's just ingrained. If you start something, you don't stop until you're done, or maybe never, I don't know. And so I just realized that that wasn't working. Like there were too many yeses. And in the season, I had to like back off. And I'm in another one actually. Like I'm pausing the podcast for the first time.
Wow, I didn't know that.
I
That's
know. I
huge.
haven't announced it yet. I just told you. But realizing like sometimes you just have to sit down and write. So what are all the things that I said yes to, right? Like we talk about like we're so burned out. We're on this treadmill. Like, well, who caused that? Me. Whose fault is that? Me. I'm not a victim. These are my choices. So this yes list, I was in the shower. That's where I get all of my inspiration. It's quiet. No one's talking to me. My kids don't go to school, so that's my spot. And just I feel like God was like, just write the list, write the yes list, and then let's look at it. And so when I wrote it out, it was helpful. It was long. It was a full page in my, Thriving Motherhood Planner. All the think and process lines are full. And I realized like, okay, now that I have this list, I need to look at it and be like, can some of this stuff just wait? That one's so hard. Like, why wait? Right? It's like, no, let's wait. Okay. Can things wait? Can I not do them? Can I let it go? Is it the end of its time? I think the pithy phrase is delete, delegate, automate, delay, right? But just like taking time to look at it and honestly, like I'm not in a situation where I'm automating a lot of things right now. That's actually not true. I am usually working on at least one system at a time, but I'm working on one system at a time, right? So there's just a lot of stuff that have to pause or wait or be messy for a little while. So mostly what I'm doing is in this season, it's like just no, 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 maybe later, not right now, and really shrinking that list. So we came back, right? And I'm here during the summer. I was like, I'm going to write the book this year. I'm going to do all these things. And I realized, no, I mean, yes. In my brain, I'm like, it's all in my head. It's like all there. Why can't I just do it? And it's like, because I can't do everything all at once when I'm already doing all these other things. And so just in July, I did a whole cull and I like cut a bunch of stuff from my list of things I was sure I could do. And then I just did another one. I just culled a bunch of stuff. And for the first time ever, the podcast got cut for a while. Like I had to cut stuff. And so I think I'm just at a point in my life where this yes list is so powerful because you can get clear about what you're saying yes to and then just let the rest go for a while.
Yeah, and I really appreciate it because I think you read more than anyone I know. I mean, especially with like the personal development books, which I love and appreciate. And just to be able to go through that and be like, yeah, the things that I am reading right now, I've said yes to that, but also to be able to be like, I don't have to finish this or I don't have to finish it now. And I find one of two things happen when I start to do that for myself, go through a list like that. Number one, I start to judge myself because I'm either saying like, oh, this is something that I committed to, or what does this say about me that this is ridiculous? But like that I took a book out of the library and now I'm not finishing it, and but some of it is that when I have said yes to something and it's a good thing and it's something that I'm really excited about, and there are multiple of those things, it's kind of like that. Is it Lord of the Rings was like, my precious, like I just don't want to let go. And I think, well, I can handle it. I can do it. Usually it's my husband that's like, you don't have to, right? I'm like, yeah, but I really want to. So when we start having that like resistance, whether it be judgment we put on ourselves, what we think others are going to think of us, if we are going to be letting some of this stuff go, how do you deal with that? Whether that be like personal guilt or like mom guilt or that whole thing where I feel like I have to do everything like right now. Like, what do you tell yourself as you go through that list to be like, especially for the podcast, that's huge, like to be like, no, this is something that in this season I need to let it go. Like, how do you actually make that decision and don't talk yourself out of it?
So I think, first of all, like center of everything for me is time with God. And so I think like being in often constant discussion and prayer and thought, and I have built up this muscle where I think I've gotten some confidence in getting an inspiration and acting on it. So, like with the podcast, there's two things at play there. One, the reason why I'm switching out is because I'm overhauling courses and content and creating things in those programs that I know will be foundational, that'll help people way more. And for me to keep trying to do both and split attention is gonna be very ineffective. So I think like in that situation, I have a very clear purpose for the pause on that. And so that helps me give me some confidence, like that it's temporary and this is why I'm doing it. And it helps everybody, like not just me, it's going to help everybody way more. But that being said, like if it does feel weird, like all of this is messy, right? But I just have this, I have gotten good at I have a thought and then I act on it. I have a thought and I have to act on it. And the thought came like, just pause it. So you can do one thing. And it's not just like, just pause it willy-nilly. It's like, no, I understand the principles, essentialism, right? One arrow. And I am so good at having 10, 20, 30 arrows and be like, I can do it. I'm the exception to the rule. But in this case, it was so clear this principle of like, you need one arrow right now in this domain of your life, just run with it. I think the other thing too is like, I am so, I hear people write lists. I'm like, I don't need to write the list. I've got it in my head. It's fine. But this time when I wrote it down, I can't even tell you, like, just write down the list. Even if you're afraid, just write it down and make it an experiment, make it hypothetical, and just like, what if, right? Just ask that question. What if I didn't do this? What if I pause this? What if, and you know what? Relief. I feel so much relief. Once I like stopped working on the book, I was like, geez, Louise, I feel amazing. Like it's just like, So, one of the things we talk about all the time is we need to be able to experiment. And give yourself space to explore things. When we're talking about figuring out what you want your life to look like, we talk about exploring. When we talk about goals, we talk about being curious to committed and to doing this, like, just be curious, just try something. And you have a short time commitment that you're committing to it. So maybe you're like, I'm just going to pause this for a little while. What if we just pause? You brought up extracurriculars. What if we just paused it for a month and didn't pay for it for a month and see what it feels like? Like, so often we just try and like, I'm making this decision. It's going to be forever. And it's like, that's the exact opposite. Just try stuff because we stay stuck. Like you're saying, we're stuck in these feelings that feel bad, the guilt or the shame or the embarrassment. But then like we're just trapped in these feelings. And unless we're willing to start taking action, we're not going to change the circumstances that are causing all this crumminess. So anyway, that's what I tell myself.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. You actually reminded me of something actually from the minimalist that I use for decluttering, which is called the spontaneous combustion rule. And
Uh-huh.
it's if this item were to spontaneously combust, how would I feel? And
Yeah,
if the answer is relief, then you know you shouldn't keep that thing. I never thought of it in terms of like something on a list. Like if
that
I'm
totally
actually
changes the yes list, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
I like the
But if
visual.
you like cross it out, like be like, well, how does that feel? Is it super scary? Okay, maybe, but are you feeling a sense of relief? And if so, like you said, it doesn't mean forever. I think one of the hardest things that I have learned is, especially as someone like you that kind of likes to achieve or can tell myself, hey, I can handle this, is to realize that it's okay to do something for a season. It's okay to experiment. It doesn't have to be the all or nothing. Like, I feel like all or nothing is very praised, like in our culture. It's kind of like, okay, well, I'm going on this diet tomorrow and I'm not going to eat this food or drink this thing for my entire life. And it's starting today. And that just is not realistic. Like, that's not how, like, a healthy way to approach things, and more like, okay, what would it look like for a month to pause swim lessons, or, whatever it is. And that kind of brings me to my next question. I told you you're going to be doing a little bit of coaching with me today. But my kids, they're both playing fall soccer. There actually is that movie called Kicking and Screaming, I think, about soccer teams. It's with Will Ferrell, but I'm kicking and screaming into being like a sports mom. And my husband is very opposite. He's very like, okay, we're supporting them, like we're letting them kind of explore what they want to do. My son, being his age, they now have two practices a week, and then my other son will have one practice a week. So knowing coming into this next season, there's going to be 3 nights where we're having this soccer practice may not seem like a big deal to other people, but for me, it's like I don't have a choice to take that off my yes list, meaning that it's not for me. It's like for my kids. We're just doing one sport. We're not doing like a million sports. My husband is very supportive of it, but I'm kind of not. So, like, is there ever a time when either, you or your husband are kind of not on board and you really have to be like, this is too much for me, but you're wanting to do it? I want to cross it off my yes list, but it's still important to you. How have you navigated that? Because I'm kind of feeling that tension right now when it comes to sports.
Yeah. Well, first of all, in full transparency, I also feel a major anxiety about this principle, and my kids have never played sports, and my oldest is 11. And so there, I feel like I have to confess that before I say these things. I also have a husband who's not super like pushing for it too. So here are kind of the two ways I would look at handling this or think about it. First of all, if this is something that your boys are excited about and your husband's excited about and involves your capacity, is this something that, like, what if this was actually fun? What if this turned out to be amazing? What if, like, give your brain a chance for it to be positive and to say, what would this look like if I enjoyed it? And also recognize that, you know what, maybe this is a way that we bond as a family. Maybe this is one of those like maybe one of those major important things. Family is so important to you. Being a mom is so important to you. Your relationship with your husband is so important to you. Is this now just a new season and a new way that you're strengthening that relationship? Maybe yes, maybe no. But like we have to, I think as moms too, like at least me, I was just realizing this yesterday. Like you get into these patterns of like, this works for me. Do not touch what works for me. And I think it's a safety survival mechanism that I like for me, I realized I have like these survival mechanisms that became ingrained when I had little kids and we were really surviving. And I had this epiphany yesterday when I was like, wait a minute, I don't just have these little kids anymore. Maybe I don't have to have these like intense safety survival mechanisms that keep me feeling like I can handle life. Like maybe I don't need those as much as I thought I did. And so That's one option. And so then if that's the case, and in tandem with that is then having the conversation of your husband, not, I don't want to do soccer. What can we instead? It's like, okay, we're doing soccer. So that means my capacity now, energy and time is shifting. So what are we going to give up? How are we going to change this? Like, what else can I cross off my yes list? Or what are you going to pick up? Or, like, and or even the boys, like how can you wrote them in, hey, we're doing soccer, but that means I'm not doing this at this time like I thought to. So how can we, I instead of putting all on us and just getting stuck in guilt and shame, it's we need to have a family meeting. Things are changing. How exciting. I'm excited. You're excited, but we have a problem. How can we solve this problem? Let's talk about it, and just make it more of a collaborative process instead of just like holding on to it all ourselves.
Yeah, that's one reason I love working with you is that you have a great way of reframing. And I will completely admit that ever since the sport started, I have been like victim mode. I'm like, what about my time? And I want us all to eat dinner as a family and, well, and just to kind of look at, I think kind of as a corollary to the yes list, if I may, to have something like, what is this costing me?
Oh,
Like, what
yeah.
is it costing me to have these practices 3 nights a week? But also, what are the benefits? Like, what are the benefits that maybe I'm not thinking of?
Oh,
And the
yes.
benefits, yeah,
Well,
like
I
the,
just had this thought yesterday because I was like
mhm.
stuck in all of these horrible things in my mind about but I was like, what about the blessings? I never thought about that part.
So maybe that could be like once you do your yes list and then you decided, okay, either you're having trouble figuring out like what could go, then looking more from that, what are the costs and then what are the blessings or the benefits. But then also once you have decided like these are the things that we want to keep, then being able to look at it from that benefit. And I love that. I mean, just seeing the family as a team, that's again something that sometimes I struggle with. Like I know inherently our family dynamic is super important, that we're supporting each other, but I'm not always the one to be like, okay, let's sit down and talk about like how can we help each other? Like, what does this mean? Maybe it means that we're going to be okay having oatmeal for dinner 1 or 2 nights a week because
And
we're going to be
breakfast.
in breakfast. Yeah, because we're going to be doing sports 3 nights a week. And we just decide, like, hey, that's okay. And I'm not going to come into the kitchen and be like, what's that? We can agree as a family that this is going to be easy so that, again, I'm not feeling stressed as the one that's primarily making the meals. So, yeah, I think that this is a great way to think about it. And it really just like not only alleviates that pressure, but like you said, writing it down has been so huge for me. And I find when people are like joining my community and they're just saying, I don't know where to start. I'm so overwhelmed. Things are so chaotic. And when you have all of that swirl, like you literally can't hold on to anything. But if
Mhm.
you're able to just start somewhere in making the list, and then you can kind of go through and be like, what is this thing? And kind of ask yourself some of those questions. I think that's so amazing.
Well, I think the other thing too is like you get to the end of the season and you might realize, nope, family dinner 3 nights a week matters a whole lot to me. That was a great experiment, but sorry guys, we need a different solution because we really noticed a lack without that. Like that's also a possibility. And so I think you can leave that, like you're not necessarily, I'm not saying you're wrong, right? Like you might be spot on. This might not be the right thing for you. And so I think just being open to both and also giving time for the experiment to run its course, but also like having that conversation ahead of time, like, hey, these are my concerns. These are the things I'm worried about. And so I want to circle around at the end of this time and we're going to evaluate that and see together if this was worth it or not. And so it's like not, yeah, so you're not boxed in.
Yeah. I think my last question would be just kind of like when it comes to any external pressure that you might feel. Now, for me, it would be more other people within our school district or maybe like PTA responsibilities, what other kids are doing when it comes to sports and activities, and feeling just sort of like that's interesting. So and so has their kid in this, and this, or I guess I could volunteer for this thing. Like I got an email today about them needing soccer coaches. I know nothing about soccer. I have no interest in learning, but the people pleaser in me rises up and goes, "Oh, well, maybe you can learn how to be a soccer coach." And then the other part of my brain is like, "Are you crazy? You're a band geek. You know nothing about soccer." And I guess for you, that might be more applicable with the homeschooling. It might be more applicable for like the church responsibilities because you were mentioning like the church choir and everything. How do you deal with whether that is actual pressure or you're just kind of like sensing it? Like, service is important to me. I want to be able to serve within my church. It is a value of our faith organization that we are serving, but this is like outside of my capacity right now. How have you been able to deal with those external pressures, whether they're overt or kind of, a little bit more nuanced?
That's a great question. I don't think that there's one right way, one only way. I think there's so many like case by case things. Like one, it's like, well, I'm just comparing myself. I'm now like, okay, comparisons, you just got to kind of push them under the rug and out the door. I think that this is going to be kind of boring. It's what I always say, but time with God. Because I find that the more confident I am in what I've already chosen to do or what he's placed in my path, it's easier for the other things to fade away. But then sometimes the answer is yes, you need to go do those things. And I find that, for example, like someone messaged me and asked for help, right? And it's like, well, but okay, but I have these other things I'm already doing today. And somehow, prayerfully, everything falls into place and I can do all those things, or right now, I have many times said the prayer as our seasons of life change. Hey, I feel like you want me to do a podcast and create this program. Oh, and homeschool my kids. Oh, and support my husband. Oh, and now I have older kids and they have different needs. And I don't know how to solve these things. And how do I puzzle this together? And every time, oh, and I'm running a household and it needs to be decluttered. And, okay, the list keeps going, right? And these are all good things. And sometimes we can't just delete them, right? Like that's not always the answer. And so I feel like when I come back to it, I said, okay, how is this going to work out? Because this feels right to me, but how? And I always get inspiration. I always get help. I always get these little details. And that's how I do it. And I know it's different for everybody, but that is honestly how I do it.
Yeah, I love that. And then sometimes, my inclination is, oh, what kind of resource do I need to seek out in order to figure out how I'm going to juggle all this? Like,
Mhm.
what, podcast do I have to listen to, or book do I have to read, or any of that? And a lot of times it's just allowing myself to get quiet and to have that time with God and to be able to like discern that. And I will say, and one of the things I love our pastor says, he says, prayer should be your first response, not your last resort, which I love because a lot of times, and I'm, guilty of this, it's just my last resort. It's kind of like, oh my gosh, I'm at the end of my rope and God help me, instead of
After talking to
proactively.
like 10 other
I know.
women, right? Then your circle, like, I have to call and say this thing 12 times before I can pray.
But just to have it be proactively like
Yeah.
the first thing that comes to mind is hard, and it's something that I'm continuing to learn. And so that's just really really helpful. And just curious if you have any final thoughts on the topic, and then I want you to let us know, especially in this new season with you taking a break from the podcast, the best way for everyone to connect with you and kind of all the fun things you have going on business wise at the moment.
Yeah. So, final thoughts. I think where we ended, one of the most powerful things we can do for ourselves, ironically, as a podcaster, is just like what you said, turn it all off. When you're feeling overwhelmed, I think the very first thing, and you're like hearing this principle of a yes, yes, and you're like, I need this. One of the very first things that get crossed off your list is all the influences online, the podcast, the YouTube channel, the social media, because what everybody's doing is saying, here, this is a problem. Let me help you solve a problem. And you're like, great, I have that problem. Awesome. Let's solve that problem. But you're like, oh, but then this problem, every square has another problem for you to solve. And the reality is you just need to get to a spot where you figure out what is the problem that you need to solve right now your way and tune the rest of all of us out, and give yourself permission to do that. I think that's the most important thing, is just quiet the outside noise, because I'm amazed just by doing that, how much less problems I all of a sudden amazingly have. So there's that. As far as where to connect with me, I have 6-7 years of podcast episodes you can go back and to listen to at Thriving in Motherhood Podcast. If you go to thrivingmotherhoodpodcast.com/checklist, you can get the 5-step path from surviving to thriving, which we didn't talk about today, but it's absolutely integral in everything I teach and do. And I've got a toolkit coming out that's going to support you along that path. I've got a planner, 2025 planner is going to be launching soon. So I'm pausing the podcast, but there's a lot of that good activity happening behind the scenes. And if you get on the email list, you'll hear all about it.
Yes, and I frequently talk here about the Thriving in Motherhood Planner. I love mine, and I love doing those monthly reviews where I can see what actually happened instead of being like, oh my gosh, last month was a disaster.
Which is how we all start the calls. It's amazing. After 4 years, we still think.
And Jessica's like, well, who wants to go first? And sharing their month, and everyone's like averting eye contact in the Zoom. And then we actually start, and we're like, oh my gosh, like that was a pretty good month. And it's just, I can't say enough good things about the planner. And then, of course, the Soaring Mother Society, just being able to connect with other moms and be like, we are making progress. It doesn't always feel that way, but we are making progress on our goals and these things that are important. And Jessica's fantastic at the reframing, celebrating, seeing the positive. And I mean, who can't use more of that in their lives?
But I think we also do say, Emily, because you and I have been friends since I think 2017 or 18 is when we first connected, when you were writing about minimalism. And so I think like your commitment to helping women with this area of their life and overcoming the overwhelm by figuring out their physical spaces and stuff, like you've been doing this for what, a decade?
Almost,
You're approaching that. And so I think what's one of the beautiful thing is just how you have continually, we talk about week after week, month after month, found little ways to help support the women that are in your circle of influence. And I just think it is amazing and beautiful to watch your journey over the course of a lot of years and just unfold. And I love all that you do in your world to bring your light.
Yay. Well, thank you so much, Jessica. That means so much to me. And you can see, all the hearts, all the love.
But Zoom didn't do it this time for us.
I know. There's no hearts and balloons going off. But thank you so much for your time and your insight and your expertise. And I will link to everything that Jessica mentioned in the show notes. And again, thank you so much for being on the show. It's always great talking with you.
Thank you.
If you like today's podcast, here's what you can do. Just take 30 seconds to leave me a review. I know you're a busy mama. You're overwhelmed, in fact. But 30 seconds of your day makes such an impact. I'll be blessed by your words. They'll definitely make my day. And who knows, you might be entered for this month's giveaway. In Apple Podcasts, scroll down to write a review. Thanks so much for your time. I'm so grateful for you.